is included in the subtree that you will explore from Y. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So basically, in order to show that, you basically consider your graph, okay, and you basically consider a random R here, except that you impose the edge at the beginning to be either X or Y. Okay? And then you look at the part of the graph that you will export from there. Since Y is higher than X, you might consider more nodes, but no less. Okay? So basically what you see is that the explored area, let's say AX, is included in the explored area AY here. Okay, so you will make more queries for Y than for X, and the same on the other side. Okay? And since this is true for any value of R outside this edge, okay, this is exactly that you're demonstrating. But the expected value, this is true, this is the complete distribution. Okay, so it's a coupling argument, more or less. Okay, you just run, except for this part, you just leave the other one random. Okay, but you look at for the same random string, for the same random bit here, you look at the area that is explored, and you show that for each of them, the area explored from X is included in the area explored from Y. So this shows that on expectation, this is true. Since this is true for all R, this is also true for expectation. Okay? Basically, what we show is that the random value, let's denote by Qx the random variable that tells you how many nodes are explored by this procedure, and the same for Qy. Then you show that whatever the random string is, the random variable Qx is less than the random variable Qy. So in particular, on expectation, the expected value of Qx and Qy are verify the same inequality. So then you show that Q of x is less than Q of y. Okay? So using this fact, we can rewrite this equation as follows by telling that Q of, so let's specialize, so we specialize this, the equation, the inequality for x equal I over 2d minus 1. Okay, we specialize that. So what do we know? We know that Q of I over 2d minus 1 is less than 1 plus the sum from j to, so we don't need to go above I. Okay, because let's write it 2d minus 1. Okay, probability that RE minus 1 is less than I over 2d minus 1 times the expected value of Q of Rej, given that Rej is less than I over 2d minus 1. What? 2? Yes, you're right, 2d minus 2. Yeah. Okay. So we don't care so much about this constant. It could be big O of d, I don't care. Okay? But you're right, it's 2d minus 2. But it's even truer if with 2d minus 1. Okay? Okay, that's right. So let's specialize it for that. Now what can I say? What is this probability? This probability is I over 2d minus 2. Is it the way I'd like to write it? No, I know. No, sorry. It will come later on. Okay. I is for all I. Okay, this was for all x, and now for all I write that. Okay. Good. What do I want to say? Okay. So now I will rewrite it as follows. I will just split it in bins. Okay, I will just split this sum in bins of size 1 over 2d minus 1. So it's the sum for k from 1 to 2d minus 2 of the sum from j from 1 to I here. What's my problem here? My problem here is that I cannot give a bin here because this belongs to all the bins that are before. Okay, but if I specialize a little bit more here, so let's I'm not. If I specialize a little bit more here, if I ask Rij to be in the bin, this is basically what I'm going to use. Is basically that this is the sum from k from 1 to I of the probability that Rij belongs to I minus 1, k minus 1, k minus 1 over 2d minus 2, and k over 2d minus 2. Okay, what I'm using is that the probability that Rij belongs to this interval is okay, I specialize for each value of Rij. So I'm looking at when Rij belongs to this interval, then this sum here, I can rewrite it as the expected value of Q times Rij, given that Rij belongs to k minus 1 over 2d minus 2, k over 2d minus 2. So this is basically what is it? It's the expected value of Q of Rij when this is less than I over 2d minus 2. So I replace it by summing over each of these bins. Okay? And I'm using this expression here. This is an inequality here. Each of these term here, each of these term there, okay, this term is equal to the sum for k from 1 to I of that. And Yep.
In fact, if we express Qx as a real function depending on x and write the term there as an integral, we can get the answer by solving the integral equation.
Oh, okay. I don't know how to do that, but maybe. That's what you say is that okay. We can just write down like Q of x is less than 1 plus the integral from less than 2d minus 2 times integral from 0 to x of x times.
No, x time is just Qx because Q is already the expected running time. Qt dt.
poof, poof, poof. What did you say? A QT? Oh, yes, okay. Yep. Okay, so basically,
Can even write it as an equality and then resolve.
yeah, okay, so, oh yeah, that's better. Okay, that's better. I like it better. Thanks. So basically what we do is that we replace in this expression here. So basically, let's assume that, what does it say? It says that the number of requests that you will do on expectation starting from an edge with x is 1 for the edge that you're considering, plus for each of the other edge, okay? So this is basically the expected number of requests given that your, so it's the integral over, t is bad, because t was used before. So if y is the random value, of the Re prime for the edge incident to x, okay, then this random value goes from 0 to x, okay, and with probability dy for each of these integral value. And if it's y, then you will have to request at most q of y queries. Okay? For each of the incident edges, there are 2d minus 1. Okay? The probability that their edge is between 0 and x is the integral over 0 to x of dy. Okay? And for each y, you will do q of y request. Okay? So now, let h of y be the function such that h of y equals 1 plus 2d minus 2 integral from 0 to, h of x, sorry, to x of h of y dy. Okay, so now I replace by equality. Okay, so clearly for all x, h of x is larger than q of x. So I need an initial value. So what can I say about the initial value?
H0 is 0.
H of 0 is 0. Is it enough?
Yeah.
H of 0 is 1, right?
Yeah.
So h of 0 is 1. Okay, if your value is 0, then you will not interrogate anybody. Okay, so it's 1. H is the function that satisfies this as an equality. Okay, so clearly h of x is larger than q of x. Okay, so let's set q of 0 equals h of 0 equals 1. And now how do we solve that? So we have q prime, no, we don't. We have q of x, which is equal to 1 plus 2d minus 2. No, it's not q, it's h. Integral h of y dy. So now what you do is you derivate it, that's right? So you get h prime of x equals to 2d minus 2 h of x. This gives you h. So this is log of h of a prime. Okay, and that is to say that log of h of x is equal to log of h of 0, which is 0, plus 2d minus 2x. That's it? Okay, so basically what you conclude is that h of x is exponential of 2d minus 2x. Okay, so what you are interested in is the maximum value of request. So you're interested is h of 1. Okay, that's the value that we want to compute. H of 1 is the maximum expected value, and h of 1 is e to the 2d minus 2. That's much better, thanks. Okay? So basically what we have proved now, so lemma, the expected number of queries, of recursive queries, of recursive call, let's say, recursive calls in magic test is less than h of 1 equals to e to the 2d minus 2. Okay? Which is theta of 1. Okay? So the worst that can happen is to start with an edge with weight 1, okay? Because q of x is an increasing function. The number of queries is an increasing function of x. And we know that this q of 1 is bounded from above by h of 1, which is independent of the size of the graph. Yes, exactly. Okay? I like it much better. Good. So it's exponential in D, but it's still a constant. Okay? No, this was wrong. This is just bad. Forget about it. This is good. This is just ugly. This is awkward. Okay? This is much better. Okay? This is true too, but this is much better. Okay? This is easier to understand. Okay, so what did we prove? We proved the following theorem. That for every epsilon, our algorithm outputs a value in big O of, so some exponential in D, times d square over epsilon square, because we do it d square over epsilon square. So why am I allowed to do the so? Okay, it's simply the linearity of expectation. Okay, each test I will run t times magic test, and the expected time for each magic test is e to the 2d minus 2 at most. So I can multiply it by t. Okay, it's just the linearity of expectation. So in big O expected time, outputs a value such that the probability that the value is close to some matching m, let's say m of r, is less than epsilon the size of m of r, is at least 2/3. Okay? So if you want to improve this 2/3, how do you do? How do you do it? There are two options, more or less. Either you increase t, okay, you run it longer and use the Hofding bounds, or you don't want to increase t, and you run it several times, and you take the majority value. Yep.
Is it really okay to run it several times since we use different maximal matching each time?
Oh, yes, you're right. Yes, you're right. Okay, good point. Okay, so you should not do that. You should run it longer. Okay, you can improve. You're right. But you can run it several times with the same R, and this would be okay.
It's not clear because
Yes.
you can't choose the R because you pick the number at random when you need.
Yeah.
And the need you pick the edges not in the same order.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Because basically, you discover R when you need it. So you can imagine that R is already drawn somewhere, and you can rerun with the same R. So if you've already asked a value of R, then you just give the same value. But if not, then you draw a new random number. No, you don't. You don't. If just when you need it, you give it. But as long as you don't need, you don't do it. Okay? It's just you think that you have the R already drawn, okay? And you ask to see the value, okay? And asking to see the value is if you have already asked, then you get the same value. If you have not already asked, then you have a random number. But you can think of it as R is already drawn. So you can rerun the same algorithm, but you have to use the same R. And that's fine. Okay. Well, the order, there is no order in the algorithm. So there is only one order, which is the one that is given by R. So this is the first kind of randomness, okay, which condition basically which matching you compute. Okay, but you could imagine that basically, oh yes, you need R to be random, else it doesn't work. Okay, you need R to be random. So this is the first randomness. This random R ensures that this lemma, because R is random, you're sure that the expected value of the expected number of random recursive calls in magic test is constant. Okay, so you really need that R is drawn at random. You cannot pick an arbitrary R sequence. Okay, because this is true because you have this exponential decrease of R. When you do each recursive call, then R is more or less divided by 2. Okay? So if the R were not drawn at random, this would not be true. Okay? So you need this source of randomness. And the other source of randomness that you need is picking a random sample of edges. Okay? And so there is no order there, but you need a random sample of edges uniformly at random over all the edges. Okay? And this is the other source of randomness. Okay? So basically here, what we used is basically two qualities of uniform random numbers. Okay? It's first the ability to sample uniformly a set, and then deduce the size of this set by rescaling. Okay? And second, the fact that if you pick a random number between two numbers, then it's more or less half of it, on average. Okay, so there is an exponential decrease. Okay, so these are the two properties that we've used. And clearly, we really need randomness. We cannot do it deterministically. Okay. Okay, so, okay, good. So let's take a break. Yeah, let's take a break. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes.
Ils donc ça rend exactement H. Et donc si je
What do you mean?
Like you wrote 2A, 2C, 3.
It refers to the PDF. To the PDF that comes with it. PDF file. There is a PDF file that comes with it. Yes.
In the PDF, which is what to do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it just gives the syllabus of the lectures and with these numbers.
Pourquoi il y a un décor?
And do the work in the chapel.
Hmm?
En fait, c'est
The
que
work in the chapel is supposed to be
normalement,
joint work,
un
or how?
Basically, yeah, it's good if it's joint, but you can split the parts. But what I want is that in the file, clearly one part was written by somebody and the other part was written by someone. But it doesn't matter which part of which. Okay, I just want the two of you to work together, and I want also the notation to be consistent.
So we can work, but if we work together, in what sense one part is written by one and the other one by
en
another?
gros, c'est que
Yeah.
Y, c'est.
But you know, in order to have the definition, basically, when you write an article in research, you split the work, but you need to make it consistent, and you have to decide who's doing what. Okay, and at the end, it should be just one article. So that's the principle.
So we for instance,
Oh yes, of course. You have to meet. I basically don't care which part you do. Okay, all I care is that you both work on it. Okay, and it looks good at the end. Okay, that's whatever. Yeah, English. No, it's better if it's consistent. Okay, but French or English is fine with me. So whatever. Yep.
Question. The number of
Recurse. Yeah.
iterations is not dependent on n or n size
No.
of the graph.
No.
So if you pick a really big n, this
Yes.
means that and you pick a random edge.
Yes.
Means that on average they are not near close to each other. So they're not close to each other. So it will never, or expected never, encounter an edge there
No.
where air has already been
Yes,
defined.
exactly.
That means, doesn't it also mean that we don't need to remember the R between calls? Because
Yeah, with constant probability. Yeah, I think with some decreasing probability, decreasing to 0. But basically what happens is that you will fail. So this would add somehow some term here. So you would have an exponential minus n somehow. Okay, you would have an exponentially decreasing term here. Because this would be, this is the probability that you redraw the R of one edge, okay? And this is bad because you don't compute the value of a true matching, okay? Because the two matching may differ, okay? But since this happens with an exponentially decreasing probability, it's just decrease this 2/3 by some constant, okay? And you can make it so you increase a little bit this constant here by increasing t, and you can absorb this term. Okay, but you need to increase a little bit t. Okay, because this is less than 1 more or less. Well, at least let's say that for n big enough, let's say that it's 100n. Okay, and for n big enough, this is less than I don't know 1 / 10 to the 12 for n big enough, quoi. For n larger than n0. Okay, and then you can absorb it.
let's say a bit different. Let's say we have one graph.
Uh-huh.
And another graph, by just copying this one single graph,
Yes.
our n and n are big enough. That actually means when we pick one e from one of the graph, which
Yes.
has not been picked before, we essentially forgot everything before.
Yeah, but you don't compute the same matching each time.
Be a multiple.
No, because it's a different matching each time. For each of the copies, it's a different matching because it will be a different R. So you will average over all the matchings, which might be fine. Okay, but it's not the question that we ask first. But okay. So the nice thing I did not say is that you can design a magic test to answer the question for the maximum matching, the size of the maximum matching. Okay, and in that case, there is only one. There is only one value. There is no ambiguity. Okay, and it's not much more complicated. That's in the paper. Okay, so that's a nice thing. I think it's a nice extension. So if anyone chooses this would be nice to write down the maximum matching thing. It's a little bit more complicated, but not so much. basically the spirit is that you use the algorithm by Karp, I don't remember the other one, Lipton maybe, I don't know. So to compute the maximum matching where you take several augmenting paths, a maximum set of augmenting paths of increasing length. So the first time you have a set of augmenting path of length 1, then 3, then 5, and etc. Okay? And basically what you show is that if you have done that for all this set of augmenting path of length at most something like that depends on epsilon, then the matching that you get is an epsilon approximation. Okay? So since you have to consider a finite number of paths, then you can compute them locally and then deduce, construct an oracle that tells you whether your edge is in the maximum matching or not. Okay? So that's...
Here the algorithm it does not return an expected size of the maximum.
It returns a value whose expected value is very close to the size of the maximum matching.
Which one?
There is only one maximum, only one size of maximum matching.
So you're talking about this.
Yeah. So basically, what you do is your random R, instead of weighting the edges, it weights the sets of all the possible maximal sets of paths, augmented paths. Okay. It gives you an order on these sets. Okay. And it will output the result of the algorithm that will consider this augmenting paths in increasing order. Okay, so you put a value of this on this set, so it's a huge search space. Okay, but since you explore it locally, it's okay. Okay, and what you do is that you compute the size of the maximum matching where it is which is obtained by considering this augmenting path in that order. The order given by the random numbers. Okay. So basically what it exploits is the non-deterministicity of these algorithms. Okay. So you have a generic algorithm that considers the set of augmenting paths and that outputs the maximum matching. Okay. But you can imagine that instead of choosing one set of augmenting paths, you put a distribution of this set over this set, and consider all of them. Okay, that's more or less the spirit of it. It's a little bit messier, but that's no big difference. Okay, it's really nice. It's well detailed in the paper. It's really clear. It's a clear paper, except for this integral, which makes it much nicer. But that's it. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So by the way, it's related to, so you see that this is approximation algorithm, okay, but clearly this is related to property testing. Okay, you want to test whether some graph, some edge satisfies the property, that is to say belongs to some matching, okay, locally with a small number of tests without looking at all the things. And this is also related to approximation algorithms, okay, and also to basically complexity theory, where basically you want to test with some probability that the property is true. Okay, so it's kind of PCP-like. Okay, so it's just to show you that these techniques are somehow universal. You can find them in algorithms, in property testing, in verification. So property testing is basically checking whether a program is correct or not. Okay, so for instance, you can use this test to check that your greedy algorithm is correct. You can run this test, and with a few tests, you can convince yourself that the matching, the output of your greedy algorithm is correct. So this is assuming that writing this test is less error-prone than writing the greedy algorithm, which is not clear. But that's the spirit of it. Okay. Good.
What's the point of this algorithm? In fact, if we are given a fixed random string R, we just don't want to calculate the matching.
Uh-huh.
with this R, and we just want to estimate the size of this matching.
Yes, exactly.
But
No, who cares? That's right. But the technique is nice.
yeah,
And but there are other examples in the article that I mentioned at the beginning that are more interesting, like computing the approximated size of the maximum matching.
so it's a partial result, this algorithm.
I mean, this algorithm gives you the whole idea. So once you understand it, then you can understand the rest of the paper very easily. Okay, if you
So it's nice, but it's kind of useless. Why?
Sure, but anything is useless anyway. You know, we are doing science, we are trying to understand things. So basically, you know, the aim in a lecture is that you have finite time and you want the people to get to the concept. So basically what I'd love is that the person who will write down this part does not write down this part, but write down the part on the maximum matching. Which is more interesting, okay? Because this is a deterministic answer, okay? But this is, I think, the best example of this kind of stuff, which is very easy. Okay, it looks complicated because nobody believes it at first, okay, what we are doing, okay? But at least it's simple to analyze and everything. For the maximum matching, it's messier.
Yeah, if it
But
works with integral, it's really easy.
Oh, yeah, it does work with the integral. Yeah, that's perfectly rigorous. There is no problem. It's even more rigorous than what I wrote. I think it's better, better from any standard. So.
Okay.
Welcome. Oui.
C'est juste un travail de...
De scribe.
Ouais, d'accord.
Mais faut que ça soit bien. Ah oui, moi je veux les fichiers LaTeX et tout. Après, ça sera sur le site web. Ah ouais, moi je veux le fichier tech.
LaTeX.
Ah ouais, LaTeX. Ah ouais, non pas du Word ou pas du manuscrit. Hein.
Ou pas du...
Pas manuscrit quoi.
Pas manuscrit et pas du Word.
Non, c'est du LaTeX. C'est pas compliqué le LaTeX. Ah oui, ça j'ai même pas pensé à le mettre.
C'est-à-dire que c'est pas compliqué. S'y mettre en 2 semaines,
Ah bah, c'est de la recherche, hein.
Ouais, mais bon...
Non, mais LaTeX, c'est 2 secondes, quoi. C'est un peu tard, là. T'as jamais fait de LaTeX encore?
Ah bah non.
Bon, bah, il est temps de s'y mettre, hein.
Ouais, mais sauf que...
Bah, tu prends un truc où il n'y a pas trop de maths. De toute façon, c'est simple, hein, LaTeX. Hein. LaTeX, tu mets $, et puis après, tu mets les maths entre les deux, et puis c'est bon. Bah, faut que tu te mettes avec quelqu'un qui sait faire du LaTeX. Et comme ça, tu vas apprendre. Ça s'apprend en 10 minutes, hein. Franchement.
Non, effectivement, enfin, je pense que je vais pas... Non, ça se prend pas en 10 minutes. Enfin, c'est pas... Bon, après, en plus, il faut faire des...
Je pense que si tu regardes...
S'il faut faire des figures, c'est...
Si tu regardes le temps que tu vas passer à apprendre la tech en faisant ton truc, tu vois, tu auras la préparation, ça sera ça, et le temps d'apprendre la tech, ça sera peut-être long, mais ça sera ça, tu vois, à côté. Donc c'est un petit taux de machin, tu peux l'absorber dans le temps que tu auras à rédiger ça. Et...
Les figures en latex, ça c'est...
Ah mais non, mais tu fais pas les figures en latex, tu les fais avec n'importe quoi et tu les importes en PDF. Hein. / include graphics. Ouais. Ou tu prends un truc sans figure et puis voilà. / include graphics et tu les mets en PDF, en JPEG, en ce que tu veux et ça te les inclura dans ton fichier LaTeX. Hein. Ouais, mais on s'en fout. Enfin, l'essentiel c'est que ça marche quoi. Donc tu utilises PDF LaTeX, ok, et tu utilises / include graphics. Voilà, et tu peux mettre ton fichier .pdf, ton fichier .jpeg, ton fichier .ce que tu veux, et ça sera importé dedans. Ah, mais là, il est temps de s'y mettre à la tech. Hein.
C'est-à-dire que faire ça sur le stage, c'est... Enfin, voilà,
Ah ben, t'auras gagné ça.
il est temps d'apprendre...
Mais t'as plein de sites web qui t'apprend LaTeX en 2 secondes. LaTeX en 2 secondes. Fais comme tu veux, fais comme tu veux. Non, franchement, LaTeX, c'est pas compliqué. Tant que tu cherches pas à faire des trucs jolis, tu vois, tu cherches juste à faire section, sous-section, théorème, ça suffit, quoi.
Moi, je me suis toujours sorti jusque-là, parce que je n'avais pas énormément de formules avec OpenOffice, je me suis assez bien sorti.
Ah ouais. D'accord. Non, mais là, tu fais pas un BTS secrétariat, là. Maintenant, il faut passer à LaTeX, là. Donc...
Non, mais je me doute qu'il va falloir que j'y passe, mais comme je vous dis, là, maintenant, c'est pas forcément le bon.
Eh ben, faut choisir le bon binôme. Mais franchement, tu as des fichiers maintenant qui t'apprennent à utiliser la tech en 10 pages. Tu as tout ce qu'il faut. Et franchement, ça ne met pas plus de 20 minutes à faire ça. Par contre, il ne faut pas que tu t'amuses à essayer de placer ta figure à l'endroit où tu veux. Hein. Tu la laisses dans un float et puis point barre, quoi. Tant pis si c'est moche, quoi. Après, ça, je me débrouillerai. Mais franchement, ce ne sera pas le temps de copie qui sera le plus long. Ça sera pas, tu peux l'écrire en OpenOffice si tu as l'habitude. Et après ça, le transcrire en latex, ça sera fait en 3 secondes, quoi. Ça, c'est vraiment pas à mon avis, c'est pas ce qui prendra le plus longtemps. Ah non, mais attends, il faut y passer là. Ok, allez. Ah oui, tu utilises, comment ça s'appelle, non pas Xelatech, Xlatech, non je sais plus quoi, ou un truc comme ça. Lix, voilà, tu utilises Lix, c'est comme OpenOffice, ça te sort du LaTeX, enfin presque. Ok. So. Okay. So in the next hour and 15 minutes, we will try to design a randomized approximation scheme for max-cut on dense graph. Okay. Alors, let's start with defining what this means. So dense graph means that the size of edges is larger than alpha n squared for some constant alpha. For some alpha. Okay? So you have at least n square edges in your graph. Okay? So this is good for max-cut because basically max-cut what it is basically you have your graph G here and you're looking for a partition of the vertices, okay, such that the number of edges between the two sides is maximum. Okay? So we've seen this problem something like 2 or 3 lectures ago, and we had an approximation for that, a randomized approximation, which was, what was the approximation we had for this problem? So if you have no idea, which is fine, what is the first thing you should try? What you should try? The first thing that you should try, if there is a problem, you don't know what to do, what is the first thing you should try? A random partition. Okay? You just try a random partition. So what does the random partition do? So the random partition affects each vertex either to the left side or to the right side. Okay, randomly. So for any edge, what is the probability that it belongs to the cut? For each edge, the probability is that this extremity is not in the same part as this one, which happens with probability 1/2. Okay, so each edge belongs to the cut with probability 1/2. Okay, so the expected value of a random cut is the number of edges over 2. Okay? So what does this prove for the optimum value? We have a 2 approximation. Okay, randomized 2 approximation. But what can I say about the optimum value? What can I say about the optimum value of max cut? So I know that the expected value of my random cut is at least the number of edges over 2. What can I say about the optimum value? what can I say? I can say that there is a cut. There is a cut whose value is at least m over 2. Okay, this is called the probabilistic method. Okay, I have a probabilistic process whose expectation is something. This means that there exists a solution whose value is at least something. Okay, if there is nobody, if you look at the distribution here, if there is nobody there, okay, there is no way that the expected value is here. Okay, if the expected value is here, this means that there is somebody to the right of it. Okay, so the optimum is at least the expected value. Okay, so you know from this algorithm that opt is at least m over 2. And in our case, in the case of dense graph, this means that opt is at least alpha over 2 n square. Okay, whatever the graph is, if it's a dense graph, we know that the optimum value, the size of the max cut, is at least alpha over 2 n square. Okay? Good. So now, what is a p-trace? A p-trace is polynomial time, of course. Polynomial time, randomized. So it used random bit. Approximation scheme. So I don't know if you're used to this vocabulary, but an approximation scheme. So an approximation scheme, this means since we are maximizing a 1 minus epsilon approximation. So why scheme? It's because you have a different algorithm for every value of epsilon. Okay, so it's a sequence A epsilon. Or you can see it as an algorithm that takes the input and epsilon as an input. An algorithm that takes the input and epsilon as the input. Okay? And we want it to be polynomial time. That means that for each value of epsilon, it's polynomial in n. Okay? So polynomial in n means n to the big O epsilon of 1. Okay? So if you fix epsilon, so this should be a constant. Okay? But this constant can be 2 to the 2 to the 2 to the 1 over epsilon times. Huh? This is fine. This is polynomial. Okay? This is an ugly polynomial, but it's still a polynomial. Okay? Of course, it's nice. It's much nicer if it's n over epsilon. Okay? And in that case, if you can write the complexity, so something like a polynomial in n and the log of 1 over epsilon, then you have what is called a fully polynomial time approximation scheme. And these only exist for what's the name for fortement? This is only possible for non-strongly NP-hard problems. Okay, you can find them only for weakly NP-hard problems. Okay, good. But in our case, this is a strong NP-hard problem, so we don't care about that, and we will get something not ugly as that, but forget about it. That's a subtlety. Basically, it means that it is still strong if you are given the input written in unitary instead of binary code. Okay? But basically, it only matters when you have weight. If you have weight, for instance, the knapsack problem is weakly NP-hard because you have a dynamic program that runs in polynomial time in the size of a weight, in the maximum value of a weight. That means that if you have the weight written in unitary, then it's polynomial in the size of the input. Okay? And for instance, knapsack has such an algorithm. Okay, so let's forget about that. And okay, so we are looking for an approximation up to epsilon of max cut. Okay, so what we know is that since opt is larger than alpha over 2 n square, any algorithm such that the expected value is at least opt minus some big O of epsilon n square is okay. Okay? So if we manage to approximate the optimum value up to some additive term epsilon n square, then we have a 1 minus epsilon approximation. This is larger than 1 minus big O of epsilon times opt. Okay? So in fact, what we will do is that we will design an approximation that outputs a cut of value about opt plus some additive term, which is of the order of epsilon n square. Okay? Basically, this should recall you what we did before in the other algorithm, which was exactly the same. We obtained an algorithm which had an additive term of big O of epsilon n, and it turned out that the matching was about the size of at least m. Okay, that's what we used again. Okay, so basically the idea will be about the same, which will be sampling and then using this sample to guess what the max cut is. Okay? So what we will do is basically consider the graph G here. We will take a sample. We'll take a sample of a constant number of nodes, okay, and try from this sample to guess what the cut should be. Okay? So, how should we do that? So basically, what's going on is that we know that the optimum exists. Okay? There is a cut here, which is L and R. Okay? Some of the vertex are put to the left, the others are put to the right. Okay? And this is the optimum cut. We don't know where it is, because if we knew, there would be no problem. Okay? But we know that it exists. Okay? There is L here. So basically, you see that there is this sample S here. And let's say that S has constant size. Okay, let's say that S has a size, I don't know. Let's say, I'm not sure it's, let's say that it's some constant that depends on epsilon. Okay, so what we can do is basically we don't know what L and R are. Okay? But maybe we can guess. So this is a very important tool in many fields, which is guessing. Okay, maybe we can guess what L and R are. Why? Maybe we can guess the intersection of L and S and R and S. Okay? Maybe we don't know what L and R are, but we've sampled the constant number of nodes uniformly, and maybe we can guess that. Why can we guess that? That's easy. How many cuts are there in S? There are 2 to the size of S cut. Possible cut. Okay? You have to decide whether each vertex is either to the left, 0, or to the right, 1. Okay? So it's a subset. You have to decide the subset L. The other one is the complementary set. Yeah? S is a random sample of the graph of size 1 over epsilon square. Okay? So basically, you have 2 to the size of S possible partition of S. Okay? You have 2 to the S cut, possible cut of S. And what is it? What is that? Well, it's 2 to the theta of 1 of epsilon square. This is theta of 1. Okay? With a constant number of tests, you can scan all the possible cuts. And you don't know which one is the right one, but you don't care. Okay? You know that one of them is the right one. So this is known as exhaustive guessing. This is a very, very important thing that you will find in many places. What? Well, it's not a guess. It's more like, what's the name for Paris? Bet. It's more like a bet. Okay? Let's bet that this is it. Let's bet that this is that. Let's bet that this is that. And we try everything. Okay? And in one of these iterations, you will have it right. Okay? And then the analysis will just focus on the case where you're right. You don't care about the other. Okay? And you just take the best. You take the best over all the guessing that you've made. Okay? And you know that the best is at least as good as the one that was right. And if you've shown that if the choice was right from the beginning, it's okay at the end, then if you take the best choice, it's okay at the end also. Okay? Did you get the spirit of it? So you don't know what the value are, but you have a finite number of options. So you just do everything, all these options. Okay? One of them will have the right hypothesis, and you take the best solution that comes out of it. Okay? So this is a very important principle that we will see all the time. I mean, in different places. In complexity theory, you will see it in zero knowledge, or many cases. Okay? You will see that in property testing. You will see that in de-randomization. This is an important thing to keep in mind. Okay? So you don't know what the optimum is, but whatever. I'll try everything. Okay? And it's a key component of many, many, many approximation schemes. So basically what you do now is that we have this sample, and we can assume that we know the intersection of opt with this sample. Okay? Because we've tried everything. Okay? So now we know that. We know L, the intersection of L with S and R with S. Okay? So now tell me about an algorithm that you think about in order to assign the remaining vertices to L or R. What should we do? Basically, there is one stupid thing to do. Just for each number, for each vertex V here, okay, you just look at the number of edges that goes into the left part of the sample, the number of edges that goes to the right part of the sample, and you put it to the side, which maximizes the number of edges with the sample. Okay, so for instance, imagine that you have like many edges with R here and few edges with L in the intersection of L with S, then you will put it to the left. Okay? Imagine that another vertex here has many edges with the intersection of L and S, okay, and only fewer with R, then you put it to the right side. Okay? Sounds like a reasonable algorithm, right? Okay? That's the first idea. So let's see if it works. Let's see if it works. Yes, we will do it for every guess and output the best solution. So let's see on an example whether it's a good idea or not. So let's consider the following graph. This graph has 4 parts. A, which is a clique of size n. B, which is the empty graph of size n. Okay. C, which is the empty graph of size n. Okay. D, which is a clique of size n. And you put the complete set of edges, k and n, between these two parts. okay, and a complete set of edges, k and n